Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
This episode is brought to you by Hostly, a company that helps you make beautiful guidebooks for your listing. Especially for Get Paid for Your Pad listeners, get 2 free months of their premium version. For more details, visit hostly.com/pad.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. I am in Taipei, Taiwan, and today I'm talking to an Airbnb host here in Taipei. And I actually got to talking to him when I was looking for a place to stay. He has a pretty cool bachelor pad right in the area that I like. And so I sent him a message. Unfortunately, his pad wasn't available, but he told me that he's been listening to the podcast. And that's how we started chatting. We met up in Taipei. Actually, we had drinks and we had some sushi together. And one of the funniest things that he told me is that he listens to my podcast before he goes to sleep because it helps him to get to sleep. So I thought that was pretty funny. So welcome to the show, Roger Lee.
Jasper, all my pleasure to be here. What's up?
It's going well, man. I'm glad the rain has stopped here in Taipei. I actually saw some sun today, so that's pretty good.
It's a nice day out, actually. It's a really nice day out. Yesterday is like world was ending.
Yeah, it's
this past week.
I mean, honestly, I've never seen so much water come out of the sky as in the last 7 days. And I think there's been some floodings actually in Taiwan, haven't there?
Yeah, I've seen some cars be covered past the hood in water. So at least in videos online, I've seen it, not in person. In Taipei City, Taipei proper, the irrigation is excellent. We had probably no flooding, but outside of Taipei, smaller cities, they're really dealing with some waist deep kind of problems.
Yeah, it's pretty insane how hard it can rain here. The first thing I wanted to ask you, Roger, because I thought it was really funny. So my podcast makes you fall asleep.
Yep. I can't tell you how difficult of a problem I have with sleeping, but your podcast is the best solution I've ever found.
Can you elaborate on that?
No, I'm just kidding.
Is it my boring voice?
No, actually, I kind of think of it as a range of how engaging something is or how boring it is. And if something is too engaging for my mind, I'll focus on it. I'll think and I'll have a lot of thoughts about it, I'm studying. And so I won't be able to go to sleep. And then at the other spectrum, if it's too boring, then I just start thinking about other stuff that I'm worried about. And, those are things that the same problem, right? Kind of on the other end. And with your podcast, you have me kind of really in a sweet spot where it engages my mind a bit, but it's still work. So it's still something that I can kind of tune out and then eventually fall asleep to. So it's actually just the perfect thing.
That's funny because I do the same thing. I listen to audiobooks and I sometimes also listen to other podcasts when I go to sleep. And my rationale is kind of that, if I don't fall asleep, then at least I'm doing something useful. I'm learning something. I'm listening to interesting information. So, we all have these times sometimes when you go to bed, but then it takes 30, 45 minutes before you're actually sleeping. So instead of just staring at the ceiling, at least I feel like I'm doing something useful.
Yeah, something along those lines, pretty much.
Awesome, man. Well, let's go very far back in time because you've been doing Airbnbs for a very, very long time. The topic of this podcast is, how to run a business using Airbnb. You turned a bunch of apartments into one giant Airbnb business here in Taipei. And that's basically your main business. You're living off it. It's similar to what I have done for a very long time, although I only had one apartment and you have several. So we're going to be talking about how did you set it up? How did you build it? What kind of properties did you buy? And what turned out working the best for you? So I'm really excited to get into it. Sorry, did you want to say something?
I would not like to frame it like that. I would just like to say I'm a normal guy and it's totally not a business. And I'm just doing this to pass the time.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's go back to 2010. That's when you started, right?
Yeah, at the very end of 2010.
So tell us about how you got started.
So I was actually just helping someone out, going over kind of like what Taipei is. I just moved here because I thought it was the best place in the world to live. And I thought it was also a great place to do like kind of small business and small projects. And I was helping someone out working on their project. And what they're doing is kind of, if I step back a little, Taipei was kind of just like really starting to develop in the 1950s. And ever since then, like the residential places that have been being built, they're all like 3, 4, 5 bedrooms so that families could live together. And as Taipei started developing and started getting students and immigrants and people from other cities that want to work here as a profession, there started to be a need for studios, people to just be able to live by themselves, like studios and one bedrooms. And back then, like 30, 40 years ago, there are just none. There's just not being made because there's no demand for them. So there's like a interesting business model that kind of happened where when there started being this need for them, people would gut like a 3, 4 bedroom place and then chop it up into a bunch of studios. So when they used to get like $500 US for rent, for example, you would get like 300 times 4 per studio. So it was like a really good investment. People would make their money back in a few years. And this person I was helping out, it was like her first project and she didn't really know what she was doing. So I was kind of figuring out the whole way along too. And I really did my best. It was a 5th floor walk up. I'd like carry all these cement bags up and like these cinder blocks up. That's like some of the more strenuous as far as physical labor things I did, but I also did like painting and stuff like that. But eventually I got these studios up and running, and I also did the like renting out part for them as well. And back then I'd never heard of Airbnb, and it pretty much, how we know it today, it did not exist. And so I just go on like Craigslist and a bunch of local sites and just try to rent it out, whether it's like by the day or by the month or by the year. And just because I think I'm an English speaker, I ended up getting a lot of short-term tenants, whether like more like, weeks at a time or months at a time, whether they're here to like visit friends or vacation. But because those particular students were in right outside of the university here, I got a lot of students here as well who were like maybe learning Chinese or studying for a semester or 2 here. So that was kind of my original foray into property management and how I got started. So I got like, I pretty much did a lot of the bulk of this work to get these studios up and running. I learned a lot on the way. And I kind of just thought, that is easy and the numbers work. So why don't I just look at more units and see like, it doesn't take that much time. It just takes a lot of time up front. And then whatever I end up doing, I can always just have these as income, like be a landlord basically. So that's kind of how I got started with all this.
and then you decided to expand. Did you rent more units or did you buy more units?
I rented all my units.
Okay.
And so I got lucky on some of them because some of them were like owned by landlords who just didn't care about them. And so me coming in as in their eyes, I'm an investor. So I would they wouldn't even want to pay for air conditioners for places like in Taipei on a subtropical island, right? And so they weren't getting anyone interested. So me coming in, I'd renovate the whole place for them. And it ended up being a really good relationship. And so whatever I wanted to write in the contract, I had a lot of negotiating power. And so back then, Airbnb was, no one ever heard of it. So good reputation or bad reputation, it didn't exist. So all my properties say I can rent it out short term.
Right. And this is an interesting topic because I know there's a lot of people who are renting places and then they want to put them on Airbnb, but often it's against the regulations, it's against the building regulations, or there's a clause in the contract. So I think a lot of people are looking for those landlords that allow them to rent out an Airbnb. So could you provide any advice or any guidance for people who are looking to set up a similar structure as you have? Like, how do you convince the landlords that it's okay to do Airbnb in short term?
Well, I think one part of the magic is that I kind of got in the game before it was high profile. So I think nowadays it's a lot more and more difficult because especially in Taipei, like a little bit of bad reputation, like it scares people off really easily, especially, landlords are normally older people that just maybe they have their own business already or they're like retired and they just don't want any trouble. So like a whiff of trouble, people are gone. So I think that's like a really big part of whether it's luck or whether it comes down to convincing, that you have to kind of make sure that these people, if they fit this kind of profile, that they don't think it's going to be any trouble at all. So I think that's one major thing. And another major thing is like I came into these properties and they're all like pretty, as far as it goes, it just needs a lot of investment. They're like run down. And so you want to be like, say like, I'll invest like a bunch of money into this place, then I think that gives you a lot of negotiating power. And if you say like, what I'm going to do is rent it out, like that's why the money is going in, then that's something that'll convince the landlord a lot more sharply. And another thing is that they have to be kind of clear about what's going to happen with the neighbors, because there's like all kinds of relationships between the landlord and the neighbors, right? So some landlords like just don't care about the neighbors, and that might help for kind of the signature, but then afterwards, like the neighbors will cause you problems. Will be like, they don't like your landlord. He didn't do these things in the past, and then kind of demand them on you. So you can kind of consider that. But there's also the other spectrum where the neighbors are kind of like controlling the situation, or like the landlord is super respectful of the neighbors. And then if that's the case, like it can be like they can actually help you and say like, oh, they're going to try this. We're going to help out this kid. He's just a young guy trying to make it. It's a new market or whatever. And we're going to see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, then, I'll have him leave, through these kind of contracts in the clause. So these are all different ways to think about how to work with your landlord.
I think one of the good points that you're making is, when you look for a landlord, when you're trying to negotiate with the landlord and convince to allow you to do Airbnb, you always have to think about what's the upside for the landlord, right? I mean, if you're just going to be paying the same that somebody else would be paying, then there might be more liability for the landlord. because of regulations or because of safety concerns and neighbors. So you got to provide some sort of upside to the landlord. So I think looking for places that are run down and then offering to put some money into it, if the landlord allows you to rent out an Airbnb, is a pretty good strategy. I mean, I imagine.
Yeah, I would say like especially in those cases, the landlord might even be kind of down to a really small pool of people who can rent the place, period. And then like if you're willing to work with them, even though you have kind of your own terms, then I think you're moving up pretty high on their list of people that they would want to rent to.
You've heard me talk about Hostfully a lot over the past few months. I love sending my beautiful Hostfully guidebook to my guests, as it makes me look very professional. I also love including screenshots of my guidebook in my actual Airbnb listing. This helps me stand out from the crowd. Well, now I'm thrilled to announce that I'm a sponsor of the Hostfully Host program. Twice a month, Hostfully selects a host and features them on their top-ranked blog. This is great promotion for your listing and a cool way to share your favorite local spots to a large audience. What's even cooler is that each Hostfully host gets a free set of organic sheets from the clean bedroom. And now that I'm a sponsor, you'll also be featured in my newsletter, my social media feeds, and you get free access to my video course on how to be a great host. For more details and how to apply, visit hostfully.com/hostfullyhost.
So how many properties do you have now?
I have 9, including the place I live.
Awesome. I love your place, by the way. I wish you could have stayed there.
I think you have to like submit a resume and interview with me before I let you stay here. It's a pretty difficult process.
Hey, man, come on. I'm helping you sleep.
Submit your bank statements, maybe social security number. No, but I haven't rented out my place in, I think I told you like a year and a half or something. And that was only for New Year's when I was like, actually what I did was I have a bunch of Hyatt points. So I just used my Hyatt points to rent a hotel room at the Hyatt. And I just stayed there and rented out my own place just for $1. So.
Right. New Year's is a pretty good time to rent out, huh? I bet you're getting really good rates.
Yeah, Taipei is an awesome place to come during, I mean, any time of year, really, it's a pretty awesome all time of year. I'd say August, don't come in August, but otherwise, awesome place to come. New Year's, you get fireworks coming out of 101. That's like unbelievable. It's so cool. So
I know, yeah, that would be amazing. I'm looking at the 101 tower right now from my window, actually. And for those who haven't been to Taipei, the 101 tower is, I don't know exactly what the ranking is now, but it used to be the tallest structure or tallest residential building or tallest office building in the world. One of those, but it no longer
all
is.
3.
It used to be all 3, huh? But it's
Yeah.
Since then it's got taken over by the building in Dubai, right?
Right. That was the first one, and then I believe there's one in Shanghai now.
Okay, interesting. But it's still an amazing structure. I've been up there a couple times. Obviously, the view is really cool. But also what I find really interesting about the tower is the mechanism that they installed to make sure that the building doesn't collapse or get damaged during earthquakes. Because there's quite a few earthquakes down here, isn't it?
Yep. Sometimes you get woken up in the middle of the night, but I think it's kind of pretty cool rather than anything to be worried about.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I experienced my third earthquake last year here in Taipei, and it was by far the strongest that I've ever experienced. And that got me quite scared, to be honest. I really didn't know what to do, because what do you do when there's an earthquake? I basically just sat on my bed and prayed that it would be over.
I like to play with my phone. I like to make a Facebook post to see who has the coolest Facebook post about the earthquake within 10 minutes. Or I like to maybe see message my friend and make an earthquake joke. But other than that, there's really nothing to worry about, in my opinion.
Well, you've clearly gone through more earthquakes than I have in my life.
Well, I have to say, you've been around Taipei a lot. I think a lot of people have kind of a weird notion of earthquakes, as far as I understand. But if you just go around Taipei, Like, how many buildings do you see are destroyed by earthquakes?
I don't think I've seen any.
Well, then what's there to worry about?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I
Still,
mean,
I still get scared though.
there's like, most of the places have been built within 70 years or whatever. So within 70 years, how many buildings are destroyed by earthquakes?
And there's, I mean, how many earthquakes are there here per year?
Lot. I
A
don't know
lot,
how many.
right? It's almost like it's almost like a little storm or something.
Yeah, I would say like a decent one once every few months is not uncommon at all.
Right. Anyway, let's move back to the topic of Airbnb. I wanted to ask you, you've been doing this for about 7 years or so. What are the biggest challenges that you've seen, and also what are the biggest learning lessons?
Something I was really annoyed about was smart pricing. That was really tough. I think right when it came out, I think a lot of my instinct, as well as a lot of other people's instincts, were, this is the lowest you'll accept, and then this is like the highest that it should be. And then it ended up being like only priced at the lowest. And I was kind of thinking like, that's not what we agreed to. But I feel like just as far as what happens in the market, like everyone kind of did that, and it kind of just messed up the market. And especially at the same time, China announced that they weren't sending any more tourists. Like they're like significantly reducing the tourists. I forget what number it is, but it's a really significant number. So both of them happened at the same time, and I think that just like kind of screwed up the market at the time. And I thought that's really unfortunate. Another thing that I think I want to say is a challenge, but it's more of a learning experience, which is that, you have to deal with all these different kinds of people. And I think when it comes to just life, that's just how it is. You have to deal with jerks, no matter if you have the best job in the world or not. There's just like no such thing as a job where you don't have to deal with jerks. It's kind of why people pay for things, is so that, you can be a jerk to someone. Maybe some people think this, maybe including me. But kind of like how Airbnb works is like, if sometimes I feel like, someone's being a jerk and like making a big fuss about nothing or something like that, like, and then they contact Airbnb. Airbnb might just be like, we'll just take this back to zero, like you guys never met. And, it could be unfair, it could be not fair. Fair is kind of a wide range. And so in that sense, I think that's kind of like, it can be a pretty poor way to start or end my day is a fair way to put it. But other than that, I mean, it's completely transformed the market. It's probably the best thing to happen to travel. I mean, in my lifetime, maybe more than just my lifetime. Well, not better than airplanes, but in my lifetime. And then it's just kind of a pretty incredible thing overall. So that's what I have to say.
And what's the learning lesson from the sort of the more negative experiences that you had with your guests? Is the learning experience that this is just part of the business, so you just got to deal with it?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, there's a small gamut. I would say always trying to take the high road. I know it's tiring. I know it's very often unfair, but I think it's probably just still the safest way. And then aside from that, I think you also kind of want to know, like, Airbnb is trying to cultivate this culture that everyone should be, I don't know, maybe like nice to each other, and that it's a community. And I totally agree with that. I think that's the best possible outcome. It's kind of like when we first had eBay when I was growing up, the reviews were kind of like the first step to making eBay possible. This is like the next step to making like a real world community where people are actually meeting each other instead of, for example, like Reddit, people up and down each person's post based on if they think it's good or not, which is like a kind of a similar thing. But in our case, people are actually meeting each other in person. And we're actually creating this kind of community, which is not just ambitious, but really could be, a pretty amazing thing as it evolves the next 10, 20 years. I have to say, I've met some pretty awesome people that have been my guests, and that's really probably the best part about doing this. And some people that I'm like really tight friends with.
Awesome, man. Well, I think it's quite impressive what you've done. You're very modest about it, which is a good thing. But I think it's awesome what you've done, and wish you all the best in the future with your Airbnb business. And hopefully, I get to stay at that nice little pad that you have in the future sometime. But thanks for coming on the show. And it'll be funny. Next week, you can listen to yourself when you go to sleep.
I'll probably skip myself. There's no way I'm going to be able to fall asleep if that's the case. I'll probably have nightmares.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Nobody likes to listen to themselves, right? I remember the first episode that I published. I listened to it, and then I was like, "Oh my god." I don't know how many hate comments I'm going to get on this, but you know what? I never really got any, so it's all good. Anyway, thanks, Roger. Thanks for your time, and to all the listeners, thanks for listening. And on Friday, we'll be back with this week's news episode, so I'll see you then.
It's been awesome, Jasper. Much love to you and all your fan base.
Awesome, dude. Take care. Bye-bye.
Laters.
Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad.